Tell me,
Oh,
tell me how the idea for the book came about.
Well, funny enough, now that we're here at DU, so we're both Disney fans. We both Kathryn grew up on Disney and kind of got me into it. But we went to the Walt Disney Family Museum in 2018 as part of kind of our mini Disney activities, and there was a big timeline there of Walt Disney's life. And one of the mentions was that he had tried to build this ski resort in California in the 1960s. And one of his partners on the project, it mentioned, was a guy named Willie Schaeffler. And Willie Schaeffler was actually the head ski coach at the University of Denver for many years. And that's where we met, was working at DU. Kathryn went to DU. So that kind of really got us interested in the story, that there was this Disney story we didn't really know much about. And it had a very close connection with DU and kind of our shared past.
yeah, very famous Colorado skier.
Yeah. Where did you get most of your research material? I was looking through some of the sources.
Yeah, it was a number of things. It was certainly a lot of different archives, and I think we combed through thousands of newspaper articles, to be honest, over the years, from when this took place in the 1960s and 1970s. And we certainly spoke to dozens of people who were there during the time, which was a big feat to try to find people, since it was, again, a long time ago. A couple of our sources, for instance, were Mike McCloskey, who was the head of the Sierra Club at the time, and he was the one who led that opposition against the Disney ski resort development. And it was a number of books, a number of Disney annual reports, a bunch of different other reports. What else did we look at?
There's actually a whole archive at USC also. A woman that was involved, one of the cabin owners in Mineral King that we spoke to, she donated all of her letters and press clippings and government documents and stuff. So we went out to USC for a few days early on to look at that archive also.
Yeah, that's right.
So usually in a joint situation like this, someone takes on the lead of the writing and the other person does the lead of the research.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys divvy it up?
Probably pretty equal. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of a combination of the two. I think at some point he was kind of in the thick of the research for sure, and then I was kind of in the thick of the writing, and then we would swap a little bit. But once we kind of got the hang of what we were doing and where the story was progressing, one of us would maybe focus on one, a bit of time or chapter of the book and chapter of the story, really, and then the other person would be, working on another part of it.
What's the most surprising thing you found out through this story? What really got a reader's attention?
I mean, we came into it knowing so little. I mean, one really surprising thing was just how genuine this was for Walt, this whole project for Walt Disney, that he was really this big nature lover, this big conservationist that had won a bunch of awards from nature organizations, that had started this True Life Adventures series of wildlife documentaries. So that was, to me, one of the really big, interesting things.
And I think, the skiing connection, of course, especially for readers of Powder, is just how influential the Disney development, even though it never happened, it had this huge impact on skiing that for many years later, it had a really big impact on the Vail ski resort, actually, in the 1980s, when they kind of reinvented themselves as a family-friendly destination. They actually took a bunch of cues from the Disney development. They literally, the then CEO of Vail Resort, named Mike Shannon, he actually went to the Disney archives, pored over some of those plans, and then basically took them to reinvent Vail. And it was a massive success. And then a lot of other ski resorts then basically took those same kind of cues, trying to get them, get families to come out there, to get non-skiers to those destinations and things like that. And that was a real surprise to us that Vail had that connection, and just how influential this Disney development was.
It'd be easy to picture that German castle that is Disney's It'd be easy to see that in Vail, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's insane.
What did you like about doing this project?
I mean, for one thing, we did a lot of it during the COVID pandemic, so it really gave us a great thing to focus on when there really wasn't that much else to do. But it was really cool to be creative together and work on something that kind of, we could talk about while we were walking the dog or making dinner or whatever, and really have this project together. And I will say, I also really personally like the research part of it. I've always kind of been into that, but really trying to like dig for these sources and go on these treasure hunts, and when things sort of turned up, or you would just look in a certain place and find something, was really rewarding and cool.
So projects like this always spur on something else, another project. You must have something in your back of your head.
I mean, we got lucky with this because it's such a cool untold story with so many sides. But we definitely have a couple other ideas. Nothing we're quite ready to like share yet, but definitely things
crossed.
in this same vein, though, in this same kind of pop culture history vein, maybe even with some Disney ties, and
Cool. What should people know about you two?
I don't know. I mean, one of the things that we keep talking about, I think, which is just for people who are reading this book, is because it kind of has dual sides to it, right? It has the Disney/skiing side of the people who were very excited and wish this had happened, and then it has the people who opposed it and the environmental side. And what we really tried to do was basically have this be a story that is very well balanced. We tried to give equal weight to both sides, and I think that was really important for us when we were writing it. And so, there's no good versus evil and hero versus villain. We tried to say it in a very balanced way and kind of let readers to decide. And that's one thing we do want people to take away from that.
What's the most fun oddity that you found out about Walt Disney?
What would you say? Boy, there's so many.
There are quite a few.
He seems multifaceted in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, the True Life Adventures was a big one, and some of his politics in some ways were interesting, just to find out how connected he was to a lot of politicians. I mean, at one point they actually had to take the decision on who was going to develop Mineral King into Washington out of California, because both of the main two finalists, Walt Disney and Robert Brandt, were so politically connected that they wanted to make the decision like at the high levels in Washington. So I didn't know that he was so kind of, because at one point he was fairly apolitical, but then I think he kind of got into it more in these later years.
What else would you like a reader to know about your work in this book?
I mean, I think just how much of a process of discovery, I guess it was.
Yeah.
I mean, how much research we did for it, and how as we learned things along the way, we tried to put as much of what we learned into the book, and kind of hopefully taking the readers on that same kind of process of discovery that we went through, without all the dead ends and the false starts and just all the good stuff in there. But and also, like Kathryn said, just that we really wanted just to tell a good story at the end of it. I mean, it was, there's two sides of it. We gave equal weight to both, but it was just, what was really cool is that there was this really rich story that involved a lot of personalities and a lot of characters, and it went on for almost 20 years, and some parts of it have resonated even longer. So I mean, that's probably what we think is the most important thing, is we hope it's just a good, interesting read for people.
Yeah, and I would, to echo that, I think one of the things that we're excited for people to find out is that even though the story quote unquote ends in the late 70s, it really has ties to U.S. history, to Disney history, environmental and skiing history that goes years later. I mean, there's even a couple kind of Easter eggs and nuggets that we had found as recently as a couple years ago. So I think, so hopefully readers will be excited to find out about that and find out about those interesting, lasting implications.
Cool. I think that